you might want to censor this a little bit. Like, I've counted about 20
I mean, actually, you could tell I was drunk. I mean, the amount of scenes that you've used where I've got a can in the hand.
Yeah.
I mean,
It should be.
Professionalism wasn't particularly.
We need Strongbow to sponsor this film.
Yeah. But it did help with loosening people up, for sure.
Yeah.
Especially me.
Most of the people.
Yeah.
Most of the people.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Dan Beans one, that was that was pointless. But again, it was a bit like Pete, you know, he was very up for it, very excited about it, and was very keen. And when he came round, he was, you know, yeah, let's do this. He was raring to go.
I think it just goes back to what we were just saying.
Yeah, yeah.
It's that sudden realization that this is work. It's not.
Yeah.
You're not just chatting. It's almost like you're on the spot, and you don't realize that until you're on the spot.
Yeah.
And then it just puts people off.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you could have these conversations out, you know, behind the camera with these people, and they'd give you a load more. Undoubtedly, it's just the fact that they're in this situation.
Yeah, which is what we had with you in the end, because I remember when we did your stuff again, and I remember saying to you, I think it's even at the start of the film, I said I wanted to talk about everything from the very start. And I think by that point, you'd got so used to that setup, you know, from the actual production setup itself and testing it. And yeah, for you, it was a lot more comfortable because you were already familiar with that environment and you knew kind of what I was going to be asking.
Yeah.
So it became it comes off a lot more relaxed than everybody else's.
Although, which is strange from my point of view, because it never felt like that at all.
Yeah.
And even to this day, I'm not comfortable in that sort of situation.
Yeah.
Because, and I it's kind of like a little bit of stage fright every time you get in front of something or you've got to perform. Yeah, it's because that's ultimately what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you're being asked to perform.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can't not perform. You can't. Yeah, it's not Big Brother. You've got it. Yeah, you're in a situation where you're there for a purpose.
Yeah,
it is to it was never easy. Luckily, the reason why I kind of found it a bit easier was through alcoholic lubrication and cigars.
Yes, I remember that, because that was right before. There's actually you see that in there because you're smoking cigars, and then I remember Dan saying, you know, well, we can smoke, can't we? And I just found out they were pregnant.
That's right. Yeah.
So during the production, it changed.
Yeah.
From a smoking room to a non-smoking room.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's almost. I think it's 2000. I'm trying to think of the exact date we filmed it. I know it was 2019. I want to say it was kind of summertime 2019.
Well, I was going to say a little bit later, because I think we wanted to get started in the summertime because you wanted wasn't the idea of the later sort of it stayed light later, so because I think originally you were talking about being able to use sort of natural light. This is before we worked out actually you don't want natural light at all.
Yeah,
we create natural light because you want control over all of that kind of stuff. Or am I thinking of something else? But I thought we kind of started it a little bit later in the year.
I'm trying to think when it would have been.
I mean, you'll have some stuff that's timestamped.
I think it was earlier because Logan was born in January of 2020.
Right.
So what's that? That's probably March time, April time. Something like that. I remember it was nice enough for us to sit outside with the guys.
Yeah.
So it might have been spring.
Yeah.
I
don't remember any of the sitting outside bit because I never did that.
You weren't there. No, it was more for the rest of the guys. It was.
Ours was always when me and you were doing stuff. I was always indoors.
No, it was with Ian, two Dans, That's all of it, isn't it? Yeah, we sat outside just to chew the fat and everything, and because Dan at the time smoked as well.
Yeah.
I smoked as well at the time. We'd go out and have a couple of beers and a cigarette and just, loosen up a little bit before we did anything. That sounds wrong.
It's because it is.
But then we had the struggle of trying to get other members to participate.
Yeah. Yeah, which is, again, I found that a really odd thing, because there's I won't mention any names, but there was obviously people that we really wanted, I'd really hoped would be involved.
Yeah.
Because I felt that there's some people that had an important part to play in the story of it all.
Yeah.
But for one reason or another, it never happened.
No.
As much as they said they wanted to sometimes. And that's so frustrating, that was, because there is a chunk that's missing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's, and it doesn't help when these people sometimes, or some of these people, see a final product and go, "Oh, really wish I could have been involved in that."
Yeah.
Well, you were asked quite a few times.
And that was, that was the frustrating part, because we'd done so much at that point where it was coming along really nice. And when you're, essentially halfway through a production, and you're really getting off on it, going, this is going really good. And then you're, trying to reach out to these other people, and these other people that, like you just said, seem really keen, but keep letting you down. And it's like, look, I'm just asking for half an hour of your time. It's going to be, in my opinion, really worth it in the end.
Yeah.
Because when the pandemic hit and I started splicing this together, it was because there was nothing to do. To me, just before the pandemic and just before having Logan, I thought this film was failed. I thought it's an incomplete project. And then when lockdown happened and we couldn't go out, that was filling the time, going like, well, I've got all this material.
Yeah.
Can I construct anything out of it? Can I make a story?
Yeah, think about it, didn't we? I remember rightly, I kind of felt the same thing, because we'd finished the sort of filming side of things and then nothing really happened with it. And I just figured, we learned a few things, and we bought a bit of stuff.
Yeah.
And and forget about it.
Yeah.
I remember there was a period where I just figured, that was it. It was done and dusted. So it was good to finally hear you kind of not. There wasn't a lot else I could do.
No.
In that respect, because it was
all just computer work,
and it had to be left to you, because this was the thing you wanted to do. Luckily, you found your mojo and you got back into it. I think you put it to one side and kind of
I thought it was incomplete. I thought it's like you just said, it just sort of dissolved and dissipated, because to me it wasn't finished, because we didn't have at the time I thought we didn't have the right people to finish the job, which would have been the guys that weren't interviewed. So for me, it was incomplete. And I remember specifically, we had this crappy, I think it was 2003 or 2005 Mac computer. You chuck coal in this thing to make it run. It was awful. And I can't remember why we had it. I think it was something Claire had bought from, like, second hands from a friend or something. I don't remember why we had it, because I had no laptop or anything at the time. I just thought, okay, let's it was just out of boredom, just reviewing the footage over and over and going like, oh, Nick said something there that Ian could nicely follow up with, And I thought, let's just try that. And it was just done in iMovie on the computer. The computer had iMovie there, so I just put a couple of scenes in and gone bang, bang, bang. Oh, that flowed really nice. Let's do a little bit more, and then a little bit more and a little bit more. And the reason why it's one of the questions I got was, why is it black and white? is because we shot everything in HD, but for some reason this old crappy Mac just couldn't handle the footage. It would shut down if I was pushing it too hard to do stuff. It would just go boom, and like you boot it back up again and then try it again and just sort of like hope and pray it would, you know, live while I'm trying to do it. I was really pushing its limits. And the reason it was black and white is because it just couldn't handle, like, I think the processing power from the HD coming over to the computer, it just couldn't handle that footage. So it was very, not very noisy footage, very pixelated, noisy footage.
Yeah.
And then I'd heard somewhere, and I think it was to do with one of my favourite films, Clerks, that was shot in black and white to avoid the colour temperatures and noise temperatures. You reduce all that down and it cleans up a little bit. So I was like, okay, let's just turn it into black and white and try and reduce that noise in the image. So it was just purely, it wasn't an artistic thing, it was just to try and make it look.
Did you think, in that respect then, you think you'd have been better off recording black and white?
Yeah.
Would that be better to have done? Right, because obviously we recorded in colour. So you're then
the thing
making it black. Does that matter? Does that make a difference?
Knowing what I know now and what we would have done back then is that at the time we were just using the native camera in the phone. We had no control over focus, over white balance, over exposure.
Mm-hmm.
If we had had those controls, it would have been perfectly fine in colour. We were using the lamp that we had behind, like what we were calling the halo light, was just a regular, you know, Wilco's bedside lamp.
It was giving off the roll column.
Yeah, so when someone's moving and that light's behind, the sensor on the phone is looking for a light source. So when they move, it finds the light source, enhances that.
Got it.
So the colour temperatures were going up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down throughout, and that's why it was making a very messy image.
Yeah.
But trying to make it black and white and reduce that colour coming through and reduce that light coming through, it just sharpened it up a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, okay, well, how can I make it? I don't want it the whole thing to be black and white. And I thought, okay, we'll do all the past tense stuff in colour. So things like band footage, artwork, album covers, posters, they'll all appear in colour.
Because I'd expect it to be the other way around. Past tense would be black and white, and the modern stuff.
Well, for me, if you want to get arty about it, that was the colourful time.
Oh, okay.
This is the disappointment.
The disappointment. No, I'll go with that.
But that was genuinely what I was thinking at the time. I thought, you know, that was a colourful period of time. You know, and this is the reality. The reality is that we're not big famous rock stars with millions of pounds in the bank.
No.
Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. It's every time. I think you probably realise, or it definitely made me realise when it came to filmmaking, the camera work and the lighting work and even kind of sort of the story work is the easy bit, I think, from what I saw, because you then when you went to do the editing, you spent hours, and you probably spent 5 times as much time on the editing as we'd done on the recording, if not more, thinking about it.
I would say, for me, the actual process of recording is harder than post-production.
Do you reckon?
Absolutely. Like, for an example, when I was shooting yesterday, I spent hours and hours and hours getting the lights exactly where they needed to be at the right temperature.
Right, but that surely though, that's just down to experience, because as you become more experienced with that part, and let's face it, you know, if in a bigger production, somebody who knows what they're doing would deal with
absolutely.
that.
Yeah,
you're still kind of learning that as you go.
Yeah,
so yes, that will be a laborious process.
Yeah,
to get, you know, next time round, you kind of, because you've done it.
Yeah,
you sort of know half of what you want anyway. So
Yeah.
you now know that if you wanted a certain look, I'd do that. A lie here and a lie there.
Absolutely.
Whereas it was trial and error this time for you on the film that you're just doing.
Yeah.
But I still think that, so I think that bit will come quick.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I still think that the post-production stuff, the editing, I think that will always be a ball ache, another laborious, time-consuming process, because that's where you as a director especially start to really work out the story that's seen on screen.
Absolutely.
Because you've got a version of that in your head, and your storyboard, but that inevitably is going to change when you start to look back at what you've got, because there'll be, and I know the documentary is a little bit different in this sense, because you were using bits that people had said, and because it was unscripted, so you had to spend more time
filtering
watching it back to get a flow in there, whereas in a film it's scripted, so you don't have that problem as much. But I think you'll find when you come to the edit of the thing you're doing now, you'll based around the performance you've got, you'll start to edit in, and you'll be thinking about that a lot more than I think. And all I was effectively saying was that are we there yet? You spent 10 times the amount of time.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Getting me to say things that I didn't actually say.
Yeah, and that's because I needed to make a story.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this before. Like your things edited in a way. I remember seeing an interview with the band Twisted Sister, and they had what's the name of the show back in the day? Is it VH1 Behind the Music? It was like, they'd do it for every single major band at the time, where they'd do a documentary about how this band came to be and where they are now.
Right.
And they were interviewing, I think it was the bass player of Twisted Sister, saying like, how did you like, the VH1 special about you? And he said, he goes, I don't like it. He goes, because it's edited and twisted in a way to tell a story that's not 100% true.
Yeah.
But it has to be entertaining to the person who's watching it.
Yeah.
Because if it's not interesting, what's the point? And that's what was happening throughout making this. It was like, I need to, Dan says something there, but there's nothing to follow it up with. However, Nick mentioned something about this subject, where if I take if I take that response and put it at the end of that, you fabricate.
You fabricate a story,
and that made me really nervous at the time. That made me very, very nervous. I remember coming round to, I think it was yourself, Dan, and it may have been Pete. You were down the pub after I'd finished the film. And I think you were all down. I think it was just coincidence you were all down there. I think you might have messaged me saying like, oh, Dan and Pete are here. And I thought, right, this is my opportunity now to go and talk to them, to get their response, or if they're going to kick my head in for essentially fabricating some nonsense. And it really did make me nervous. And I remember saying to Claire, I have to go down and find out, because it's actually eating me up inside, because I had this vision of like you guys watching it going, that never fucking happened.
Yeah. Well, the only thing that my only concern, it wasn't even really a concern, it was just because obviously what you'd done is twisted. It was to do with the Dan leaving the band.
Yeah.
And you'd got it, me being portrayed as
the villain.
the villain, which I kind of was, but I wasn't too bothered with what you'd done, because for one, I knew that Dan knew what actually had gone, because we'd had that conversation. So I knew that there wasn't any concern there for me that Dan would suddenly watch this and think, hang on a second.
Yeah.
Nick's an arsehole. He's just
Nick poisoned everyone.
Yeah. And that's kind of what you were obviously.
Yeah.
So I wasn't too fussed about that, because I kind of knew that the guys that were involved knew what the story was, and I'd had a conversation with Dan just to make sure that we were on the same page. And I explained, Ashley's done this thing that makes it look like I've said something that I haven't. And I explained that you'd taken it from two different conversations. Two different subject matters. Not even conversations, two different subject matters.
I remember loving that scene. I remember watching it over and over again. And I remember when the harsh reality set in, like going, oh no, what if... And I was, like I said, genuinely concerned. Genuinely. And I had to get that.
But it just shows, I think it just shows that, and I'm going to go back to the whole editing, post-production thing. I think is the skill in that is probably as big as they talk about directors and when it comes to film, and I know a director is usually involved in that post-production. But I think a film editor is an unsung hero.
Absolutely.
Of this whole industry.
Absolutely.
Because you don't realise the kind of power that they've got to put a narrative into a story and have something play out in any way that they kind of want to mould it to. As long as they've got the footage there, they can make it say anything. Almost. I mean, we saw that firsthand with, I'll name drop Orange Unsigned again. They did that to us big time, because they got us slagging off the bass player out of Blur. Because they'd given us the impression that he was slagging us off. So we fell for it, hook, line and sinker, and had a right go. And he hadn't said anything.
They're just using you as a puppet.
They were, and then when they put the show together and put it on TV, they creamed us, because as I say in the film, because they just, the way that they edit it together, they put us on the show on TV. We followed the youngest guy in the company. There was a guy that was 15 years old, a Scottish lad. He was dead good. But he never played at Leeds. He played, but he gave the impression that he went on stage before us, purely so they could go, and from the youngest person in the composition to the oldest band in the company. That was the only reason he did it. I was like, you're killing us. But editing, it's a beast of a job.
It was, and it was very, very fun putting together. Just like little bits that I just thought were a bit different, like at the very start of the film, where it turns into sort of like a bit of a trippy nightmare sequence with your voiceover, and editing that like it's a phone call. Where you've got these flashing images coming on the screen with like this haunting choir in the background, just to try and and that was purely just to sort of like spice it up a little bit. I didn't want it. I think we mentioned it a lot about a talking head film. Just to try and break up the talking head narrative a little bit.
When did you get the phone call? Because we'd actually talked about maybe utilising some of these interviews and doing it over the phone. You were going to do some over the phone.
I was, and I think the idea of including something similar to that was watching things like crime documentaries where they're talking to prisoners over the phone. You hear the phone ring, and then they pick up and they have a conversation with subtitles. And I think that's where that came from, because I remember there was a feature in iMovie where you could change the sound, and one of them was called telephone. And I just thought, okay, let's just do something a little bit different in this. It was supposed to be a sequence of like the big flashing images at the start was supposed to be like a time clock going back, because you see flashes of the band, and as they flash, it gets to like older and older photographs and older footage, So it's rewinding back through time, and then it's like, oh, big thunderstorm, and then it goes dark, and it's like, well, where are we going? It was just to throw the audience off track a little bit. And because I was so paranoid about it being just a talking head film. So I thought, okay, let's just derail it a little bit, and then we'll bring them back on. So just doing what I could, and with the limitations that I had. You know, it was all trial and error. I had no idea what I was doing at the time. I had zero idea.
And that kind of became apparent with the use of music.
No, I was waiting for this.
Yeah.
I was waiting. I honestly thought as we're getting towards the end, like, I thought, okay, he's going to bring up.
Yeah.
You're going to bring up our falling out, which I think is an important part.
I think we should discuss it.
I think we should discuss it. So, shall I tell you my half of the story first?